What's up, folks? It's Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the Xler to provide you my thoughts on the latest Child's Play movie, Cult of Chucky. Yes, it is revealed now that I am indeed a horror fan. I'm not just an X-Men fan. You know, I've been watching horror since I was a kid. Why? Well, horror freaked me the fuck out when I was a kid, and so when something freaks you the fuck out, you got to face that fear. And so I did, and then I became a big fan of course, all the Nightmare films, the Friday the 13th films, some of the Halloweens, and of course the Child's Play films. So Child's Play 1 and 2 I saw in the theater. 3 I saw in the theater. I think I saw 4 in the theater as well, which was Bride of Chucky. And then I think I saw Son of Chucky in the theater as well. And then they realized they fucked up because they made it a comedy versus like a horror film. And then they went back to basics with the last one that was like a direct to digital or whatever film. It was never released in theaters, but it was actually decent. It was actually a good film. Like it was intimate. It took place all in a house, and it was sort of a return to form for Chucky as far as like being scary. And I'm apparently it was a success because now they've done this new one, Cult of Chucky, which I have to say is good. It's a good film. Like, it's not a great film, mind you. It's not a great film. The first one is probably the best of all of these, and the second one is decent as well. The mother in the first one, I think she's missing from this. I don't know if she's still alive. She played Kirk's love interest in Star Trek 4. She was the marine biologist who was in love with the whales and helped Kirk and everybody get the whales. Anyway, she was in the first one, but they never showed her again. Like in the second one, they said that she was intern at a mental facility. And then the kid, Andy Barclay, like he was in a military academy boarding school in the third one, and he was played by a different actor. And then we didn't see Andy again. But then at the end of the last one, we did see Andy, and it was actually the same actor that played him as a kid. And that was like a promise of like more to come. And so here we are now in this film. And they took some interesting twists with the story, and I really liked it. I really liked the twist that they took. So this is, like I mentioned in the title, it's a spoiler-filled review. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, like they did some really interesting things where like they allowed Charles Lee Ray, you know, who's the one that's possessing Chucky, to be in various dolls at the same time concurrently, and also inside of a person concurrently. And I loved how they like kind of brought it back to the original doll, because the original doll is the scariest. When they started kind of making him into like the Frankenstein version of Chucky, like it became a little bit campy, you know? And like this was more of like, no, let's just go back to basics. And like you could see there was a lot of practical effects here as well, which is what they did in the first one, you know? So like I think they finally realized like maybe we should just go back to you know the original formula that works. And that's what they did. And it did work. It worked really well. I really enjoyed it. The production design was really cool. It took place in like it was basically the Nightmare on Elm Street 3 of the series. Like, took place in a mental ward where the survivor of the last film now is interned because, like, I guess she believes that she was the killer, or maybe she's been hypnotized to believe it, or she's just acknowledging it as her being the killer because that's the only way maybe she could ultimately, like, you know, maybe eventually be released. So they put her in a medium security place, which is where the film takes place, and like the production design was really nice. It was like all white, but you know, occasionally you had like a lot of color in there. Obviously, Chucky is very colorful, the good guy doll, so that really stood out really nicely. So as far as the visuals went, it was really nice. It was the film bordered on cheap, but it didn't ever feel that way. It didn't ever quite get there, but it was like it was walking that line really, really tightly of like either being like a good quality film versus like a cheaply made film. Like almost, but not quite. Never quite fell into that sort of category of cheaply made. But there were some shots where it was like, all right, like I can tell you guys didn't use like the best cameras here or whatever. But the thing about this series is that like this guy Don Mancini, who was the first, who I think he wrote and directed the first one. I think he's written and directed all of them. And so there is a consistency in terms of like the storytelling and the approach. And that I think ultimately is what ties these together really well and actually makes this one a valid entry. And he kind of brings all the elements back in that have been in all of them. He brings Tiffany back. Played by, what's her name? I forget her name, but Jennifer Tilly. Jennifer Tilly. She's awesome. She's back in this, and you also see the Tiffany doll in there again. Of course, Andy's back. I liked what they did with Andy, where like he had the doll that we've been tracking pretty much the entire time since the beginning. That he now has just as a severed head, and he just keeps to torture, which I thought was like it felt like justice, given everything that this kid had been through as a kid, and all the way through, the 3 films that he was in prior to this. Like, this was justice for him. Because, I'm obviously all that stuff scarred the hell out of him. But by the end of the film, like, it all gets kind of turned upside down. Like, obviously, the Chucky dolls, now there's multiple ones, have framed him now to be the one that just, like, did all the killing here at this new location. Or not. Maybe they just... I don't know. It was ambiguous because, like... Maybe not. No, maybe not. Because he was left locked in the room that he was in when he was interned again because he was trying to get back into that place. And Nika, that girl from the original one, was possessed by Chucky and she escaped. So therefore... Okay, so they're going to pin all of it on her. They're just going to say that she just kept going on with her fucking killing spree because she's a murderess or whatever. But Andy's once again like in a fucked up position, hopefully Andy will get justice. It appears that this may go on. I hope it does because, if you're a fan like me, like you enjoy these films, and as long as they keep kind of doing what they did in this one, where it's like they're tying together all the elements that work and like are just trying to kind of, inject them into new stories that are interesting, then that works for me. It's only an hour and a half. It's not a big investment of time. And it's just fun to watch, It's just fun to kind of go back to this silly world and not have it be so ridiculously campy like it was in Bride of Chucky and Child of Chucky or whatever the hell it was called. Seed of Chucky is what it was called, yeah. Like, those were just ridiculous. And it wasn't cool anymore. It wasn't scary. It was just dumb. Yeah, there were some funny moments here and there, and the sex scene, I remember there was a sex scene between Tiffany and Chucky that was pretty hilarious. But beyond that, like, it was just like, this is not child's play. This is just like them just taking the opportunity to do something silly and just kind of run with it versus like, no, let's go back to like what made Chucky scary and what made him, relatively a horror icon as well, alongside, Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, etc. So overall, like, I enjoyed this film. I do recommend it. If you're a fan of this series, I recommend it. If you're not a fan of the series but you like horror, I recommend it as well. Like, you won't be disappointed. There were a couple of really kind of decent scenes. You could tell though in the filmmaking, I don't know, this Don Mancini guy, he doesn't really direct a lot. It's like it appears as though he only makes these movies. So I feel like because I feel like there's a slight kind of rustiness to his ability to kind of execute things. Like, maybe he holds things a little too long on certain shots. Like, he's trying for something, but it doesn't quite fit into like the flow of the scenes that he's trying to create. And so, it's not quite perfect as far as the filmmaking goes, but there is some attempts there, and there is definitely artistry there, and he definitely has a handle on filmmaking. So it's not like a disaster in any way. It's just, you could tell that it could use a little bit more finessing, but it's fine overall. And in the end, like, the way the story ended, I really enjoyed it because, you just expect like Chucky's going to be defeated or whatever, but it's like, no, now there's multiple Chuckies. Like, I love that. I love that little twist of like, oh, it's not just one doll now. That's great because it kind of had that kind of Gremlins feel where it's like, okay, well they're everywhere now. Like you can't hide from them. Like you can't, if one protagonist is like running away from them, like this other one may not, like because there's multiple ones. So that's fun. So the concept that there could be more than one is really a good concept to inject into the story. And I think if they continue on, it will potentially lead to more good stories. Not great stories, but good stories that will be enjoyable. And definitely this is the right time of year to release this stuff. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on this film. Great, again, not great, but an entry into the series that if you're a horror fan or if you watch these films and you kind of enjoy them, then you'll definitely enjoy this one. And it is one of the better ones. Without a doubt, it is better than Seed of Chucky and Bride of Chucky and Child's Play 3, which was like. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. If you haven't already done so, you can subscribe down there. And as always, I'd like to remind you that if you haven't already, you better put an X in that box, ladies and gentlemen, because you know what? Ain't nobody checking me, folks. Ain't nobody checking me. Take care. Bye-bye.